Today's intention is to receive this information with an open heart and abundance.
Hey, it's Bobby. Welcome to Student of Intention, where we help you enjoy the pursuit of purpose. And remember, don't wait, start small, learn as you go. Hi friends, welcome. I'm your host, Bobby Dysart, and fellow student of intention. This little corner of the podcasting world where we enjoy the pursuit of purpose. I'm feeling great today, coming in flip-flops after a week of vacation and rest and relaxation in Mexico. I couldn't bring myself to wear the full shoes today. Even though I love showing up professional here in the Creative Palace in Irvine. And I'm really excited to kick off season 3 with our guest today, Hallie Avolio. I'll get to introducing Hallie here shortly, but I wanted to start with a little story, a little takeaway from my travels to Tulum, Mexico. My wife and I spent, 7 days with a close couple of ours, so two other good friends, and it was just a remarkable, special vacation. I think for several reasons, but most notably are just the actions we took in this vacation. Definitely differed than vacations of past. Some of the things we did a cacao ceremony, we did a tea ceremony, we did 2 different guided meditations. So we really went inward alongside each other and alongside the couple that we were with. And I think in doing so, I kind of came away certainly refreshed, but also reflective. And as I was flying back over, the Pacific and crossing into California, I was journaling and reflecting on what do I want to take from this experience? And I think it was timely, being that we are moving to season 3 of Student of Intention. We are moving into the second year of Student of Intention. If you may remember, we started this journey in December, actually on the eve of New Year's with my co-host and captain, Chris Decker. So we're about exactly 6 months in, and I was reflecting on how do I want to go into the rest of this year? And I wasn't thinking about the normal things that I think you might think about with any project or with any endeavor, creative pursuit. I wasn't thinking about the money to be made, the deals to be closed, the outcomes to be realized. What I was thinking about was sort of the virtues that I want to carry into the rest of this year, as well as the behaviors and rituals and routines. I was thinking about the things I want to invite into my life, like joy, gratitude, acceptance, and perseverance. These are things that I really want rooted in my everyday as I continue to journey on the rest of the year. I think about, from an actions perspective, the things that I just want to take every day, week in and week out. I want to write more. I want to read more. I want to get out and move amongst the beach that I so graciously live by. I want to connect with folks like Hallie and other folks that are trying to find their authentic selves. I want to be intentional about all this, and those outcomes, those goals, those desires, what will be, those things will come. I promise. I know that for a fact. If I remain humble, if I remain persistent, all those things will sort of figure themselves out. So that's one takeaway from my vacation. And I invite you to think about those things for yourself. What virtues you want to bring into your daily life, what habits, rituals, and of course, intentions you want to bring into your life the rest of 2021. And with that, I will shift to introducing our guest for today, Hallie Avolio. Hallie is the founder of Sassy Healthy Fit. It's a lifestyle brand built to teach you how to show up in your life as your most authentic self. She offers courses, workshops, one-on-one coaching, and of course, content. I was exposed to Hallie through LinkedIn, my social media platform of choice. I I dare say hers as well. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. But I can tell right away just from the messaging she's putting out there that that we were going to get along, and I really wanted to learn a lot from her and hopefully share a lot of good things with our viewers, or our listeners, I should say. With that, Hallie, welcome to Student of Intention.
Thank you so much for having me, Bobby. It's a pleasure to be here. And I just wanted to take a moment and reflect. If you recall, when you first sent me a message on LinkedIn and you asked if I would be interested in being on your podcast, I think I said something along the lines of, you had me at intention.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, well, thank you again for responding, and thank you for being on today's show. And yeah, I think it seems just so logical how much our worlds overlap, and certainly is rooted in intention. So maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more, but I want to start with what I've found from living with intention. Slowly but surely, I've sort of like gotten to this point of like living with intention is self-discovery. It's rooted in figuring out this seemingly kind of mysterious phrase, the authentic self. And you talk about authentic self all the time. So I guess I'd want to know, like, how do you define authentic self? Like what does that mean to you now? What does that mean in your work? And what does it mean for others that you are essentially teasing it out of?
I want to start by just saying that I wasn't always a student of intention. I didn't always live as my authentic self. And I had to spend decades actually in that place of inauthenticity to get to the place where I am now, and to understand the relevance and how important it is to really being the creator of your best life, which is I'm a huge fan of affirmations. I talk about them probably as much as I talk about authenticity. And I have affirmations everywhere. I have cards, I have Post-its, but I'm looking at one right now on my computer that says, I am the creator of my own bleep life. I don't know if we can swear on this podcast.
On this podcast, let's complete the sentence.
All right. I am the creator of my own fucking life. And that to me sums up what it means to be authentic and live with intention. Because at the end of the day, we all have stories. We all have past narratives. We all have inner child work. We all have familial histories, pressures, expectations. But at the end of the day, it comes down to asking yourself the most important questions, which are, who am I? What do I want? And what is my purpose? And for those who are courageous and bold enough to answer those questions with truth, those are the people that can live in their authentic power. And when you can do that, you understand that you truly have the opportunity to create anything it is that you desire. But if you're constantly running away from these opportunities, or dodging the questions, or hoping that somehow things will shift, it doesn't work that way. Hope is not a strategy, right? I heard that a long time ago and it stuck with me. Hope is not a strategy. You have to set the intention. And just like we set the intention at the beginning of this podcast, I set intention every day. Before I open my eyes, I say to myself, today my intention is whatever that is. And I write it down in my journal every morning. And whether or not I repeat those words to myself throughout the day, sometimes yes, sometimes no, I've already put it out there. I've already set the intention, because I know that when I set the intention, then my life unfolds in the way that I want it to, as opposed to allowing for all the external to get in my way and to cause disruption.
Man, I think we could stop the podcast right now.
I don't even know what I just said, by the way. That just almost like comes out of me. Clearly, I'm very passionate about this topic.
That's right. That's right. No, I love it. And of course, like, we have our past selves, and I want to get to that, right? Like, I think you said maybe you weren't living with intention in the past, and you certainly feel like you're being more your authentic self now. So we'll cross that bridge. I definitely want to get to that story. But you also said a bunch of really good things for, like, right now, with how you're living right now. You said you start your day by setting intention. You write it in your journal. Tell me more about that. Tell me more of these actions that you're doing right now to resist those external things, to sort of chip away at that authentic self.
Well, you know what I've learned, I love what you said, Bobby, before, that intention is discovery. right? Because we're constantly peeling back the layers. And anybody that's done any sort of mindset work, therapy, personal development work, right? You know that the more layers you peel back, the more layers there are to peel back. It just keeps going and it's beautiful. And that's part of the fun. That's part of the journey. That's part of the experience, right? So for me, intention is really about what is the feeling. And I teach this in one of my signature courses, and we talk about the difference between intentions and goals. And they go together, but they are different. And the way that I describe it is that a goal or a to-do is something that is a tangible thing. Maybe it has a timeline. Maybe it's something that needs to be done in a certain way. But an intention is around how do you feel? And when you set intention around how do you want to feel, which is really about embodying, this idea of self, this idea of discovery, this idea of peeling back the layers, that's where intention comes into play. So I teach what I do, right? That's how I operate. And, I'm a student of my own life, and I'm a student of everything that I teach and I practice and I revise and I discover and I learn more and I make shifts as need be. But I absolutely have found tremendous positive impact based on being intentional with how I start my day, how I create whatever it is that I'm creating, how I raise my children, how I run my business, even how I take care of my body. And on the days when I don't do it, because, I'm human, I'm not 100% perfect all the time. Thank goodness. That would be weird. I'm not a robot. I'm happy to not be a robot. But on the days when I don't set the intention, I feel it. I feel off. I don't feel in alignment. I feel like some part of me is missing because I haven't taken that inner role of authentic power. And it's not about control. It's not like, oh, I've got to grip the wheel so tight and control everything in my life. It's, I want to be running my ship, right? And I run my ship by setting the intention.
100%. 100%. Wow. Like you even nailed two things that, like, for me seem almost fleeting or just tough to describe the nuance. When I'm talking about this idea of intention, number one, you made the distinction between goals and intentions, which I can't tell you how many times I feel myself doing that, for folks that, read what I put out in the world, ask me about my work. Like, inevitably, when somebody hears for the first time, like, oh, you're writing a book on intention, they immediately just go, oh, so like goals.
Right.
And I really appreciate you making the distinction. How does that manifest itself? I think you kind of said, that's the second part that you said really well, is it manifests itself as feelings, and how you want to feel. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I mean, a classic example that I like to give, because I think most people can relate to this. And if we look at a goal of wanting to lose 10 pounds, right? I think most adults have probably experienced that at some point in their life.
That's right.
So you have this goal, right? It's New Year's or whatever time it is. I'm going to lose 10 pounds. I'm going to lose my COVID-20, whatever it is. That's a goal, right? It's great.
Yep.
You have to take, if you follow the SMART goals kind of principle, right? You have to be specific, measurable, actionable, relatable, time sensitive, right? So you do all these things. And that's great. And to set goals, having those metrics in place is really beneficial and really important to hold yourself accountable and to get to where you want to go. But the question then becomes, why are you losing the 10 pounds? And that's where the intention comes in. What does losing the 10 pounds do for you? So losing the 10 pounds, yeah, the number's going to be lighter on the scale. Your clothes are going to fit better. But why is that important to you? How does that make you feel? And that's your intention. So it makes you feel more energetic. It makes you feel like you can keep up with your kids more. It helps you sleep better. It helps you feel more rested. It helps you feel healthier, right? So these are all the things around the intention. So my intention, therefore, is to feel healthier and more energized and to really feel like I'm nurturing my physical body. My goal to do so is to lose 10 pounds.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, no, I think that nails it really well. How I talk about it in the book, The 5 Buckets, a sort of prompted this whole journey of mine. I define an intention a planned moment we want to experience. And it sort of seeds this, the idea that you speak of seeds these feelings, as opposed to when we set goals, we're just only thinking about the goal, right? We sort of don't even remember what those feelings are like, or even understand them to begin with. Right? We maybe don't know what it's going to feel like to lose 10 pounds. So I would argue it's maybe a better practice to say, I intend to make myself a healthy meal, right? Or I intend to run to, Sunset Ridge Park tomorrow for, in the middle of the day, right? And we do this behavior, and it goes from us having this perceptual context of what it's like to be 10 pounds lighter, or what it's like to run, in the sun of Southern California or wherever you live, or to eat a healthy meal, right? A, vegetable, focused, meal, some sliced fruit, something organic. I don't know. Right. But once we actually act on that intention, then we switch our sort of, perceptual context to experiential context. Now it's like, oh, I actually know what that feels like, right? And that can sort of give us that motivation, that momentum to ultimately fulfill that goal of 10 pounds.
Right. And I also like to talk about it. This is something I've been kind of playing around with more recently, is to your point of how I don't know how I'm going to feel. How am I going to feel? I've never experienced this. So if you can phrase it to yourself, right? Because all of this is kind of playing around with our minds. As humans, we are quite complex. And there's so much nuance and so much story and so much that is unique to each of us based on our past experience, our present, et cetera. But if you can phrase whatever it is that you're doing in the form of what if I felt healthier? What if I had more energy? What would my life look like? What if I had more money? What kind of freedom would that give me? What if I was the most successful salesperson in my organization? How would that make me feel? And so by phrasing it in this way of what if, I believe that it allows you to really tap into this. It's fun, and it allows you to get creative and visualize and to really start to play around with, what would that feel like? How would I be different? How would my life change? And therefore, when you start to tap into those feelings and you start to tap into that joy and whatever it is that is calling to you, then you start to manifest what it is that you desire, because you are now attracting the pleasure of what it is that you've set up in this what if scenario.
You just keep banging out the hits, Hallie. Love it.
This stuff is so fun for me. I just have so much fun with it. It's great. It's like, there's so much self-discovery to happen for each person. And sometimes when you're in the middle of it,
happen for each person. 100% right. There's a lot. Like it's an endless loop.
endless loop. And it's fascinating. And sometimes when we're in the middle of it, we can't see it. Right. And I've been there. I've been in that place where I can't focus. I can't see the forest for the trees. I can't get out of my own way. We've all been there for, in different experiences. But if you can kind of step out of yourself and get into this place of how can I set intention, and how can I really tap into my authentic power, and how can I allow myself to visualize what it is that I really want and be truthful with myself, regardless of, again, external expectations and stories. That's a big piece. That's something that I work with my clients on a lot, is how do you step away from what you've been told your whole life so that you can rewrite the narrative that you want right now in the present moment?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that you said that it's fun. Like you seem to have joy in this experience, right? And I think, I think having that joy, like making it fun, like realizing that self-discovery is an act of gratitude, right? It's an act of being thankful for the opportunities and even the challenges that are in front of us. Now, that said, like we also, and you mentioned this, you touched on this, right? We have those times that we don't really see it that way. They're a little challenging. They're a little tough. You actually posted something the other day about a term that just is always in my life. It's a term that I think was coined by my favorite author, Stephen Pressfield, and it's this idea of resistance. And you talked about resistance in a really interesting way, or I should say you wrote about it on LinkedIn the other day. You actually said resistance is attraction. Resistance is attraction. You brought up a story about your first pregnancy, and it really just hit me. I really just loved it. Can you talk a little bit about how you see resistance as attraction?
Yeah. And it was something that I was reading by Abraham Hicks, who, of course, is kind of known for the law of attraction, not the founder of necessarily, but certainly well known for that, the concept of the law of attraction. And it's like attracts like. And when you are attracting good, then you're attracting positive. It feels great. But you also attract what you resist, because if you're putting the energy out there of what you're resisting, what you don't want, that's creating energy, and everything is energy. So by saying, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this, well, you're maybe unintentionally calling that into your life. And the story I shared is, this is way before I did any personal development work or self-discovery. My oldest is 13 now. And when I was pregnant with him, I wanted to be the coolest pregnant chick ever. I don't need a birth plan. Everything is cool. I'm so good. I just don't want a C-section. I'm so good. I don't want a C-section. This pregnancy is great. I don't want a C-section. I mean, I literally said that for 9 months. And we'd go to our birthing classes and we'd practice breathing. And I'm thinking, I'm a tall woman. I've got a solid frame. I'm going to have no problem getting this baby out the normal way, quote unquote. And I'm good. I don't need a birth plan. I just don't want a C-section. So, I'm at my 9-month checkup, my 39 weeks. The doctor says, guess what? The baby's upside down, feet first or butt first. You're going to have a C-section. I was like, what? And I lost it. And I felt like a failure. And I felt like I had just ruined my life. And everything felt like it was falling apart. And, I'm not saying that because I said I don't want a C-section, that's why it happened that way. But what I learned from the experience is, if I had gone into it with more of an open mind, instead of putting out this energy so strongly about, I don't want a C-section, then I would have been able to enjoy the experience that much more, because I would have been open to all the possibilities, which is really what it comes down to. Because how many times have we had a situation where we've resisted something? We said, I don't want this thing to happen. And then poof, what happens? The thing that you don't want. It's because you're putting out all the energy around what you're resisting. But if you look at resistance as an opportunity to grow and expand and to push outside your comfort zone, one of my favorite quotes is, everything I want is on the other side of fear. Everything I want is on the other side of fear. And what is fear? It is resistance. It is pushing out of your comfort zone. It's dealing with the unknown. But if you can take a breath and realize that when you are in that space of, this is new, unknown, uncomfortable, and yet I'm going to face this and I'm going to see what I can learn on the other side with open arms, that experience is going to be so much more powerful and beneficial than if you are constantly pushing against it and doing this dance and this struggle with the resistance and the fear.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. I mean, I just can't even relate to I think just the high of the confidence that you're feeling and in your ability to have a quote normal pregnancy, and then the perceived low of darn it, this was not my expectation. This was not in the cards of having a C-section, and to come out with that realization of seeing it as something you just could have approached differently. That definitely sounds like growth to me, and B, figuring out how you can kind of carry that through the rest of your life. That's just bravo. That's certainly self-discovery.
Well, and I just want to add, the follow-up to that story is, so I have 3 kids, and they're, so my oldest is 13, my middle is 11, and then my youngest is 7.5. And because of where I live, if you've had 1 C-section, the rest are C-sections. That's just how it works. So going into the following 2 pregnancies, I knew that was the plan. And I'll tell you, it was so easy. My recovery was so easy. It was like a breeze. Everything was scheduled. I knew it was going to happen. I felt really confident. I could go back on confirmation that I've been through this before and it wasn't so bad. I recovered quickly. And I had a really beautiful experience with each of my children's births. And yeah, I could have kicked and screamed. I could have resisted. I could have forced that I want to have a VBAC, a vaginal birth after C-section. But I didn't. I was like leaning into it. This is what it is and it's great. And I tell you, I recovered easily. My children came out perfectly healthy, beautiful. I was healthy. Everything was great. And I know that huge shift between the first experience and the second and third was tremendously powerful for me.
I sense it. I can feel it. And yeah, that was what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, you said, and it sounds logical. It sounds smart, right? Like it's based on the energy we put out there, right? And if we're putting energy of what we sort of don't want, we're bound to attract that. In this scenario, in this example of the potential of having a C-section, what did not putting that energy look like, or not putting out that negative energy look like in pregnancies 2 and 3?
I mean, I was just so, I was so calm. I just had this really confident, self-assured. I knew how it was going to go. And I was confident that this was the way that it was meant to be. And it was no reflection on my physical body. It was a reflection that my physical body could handle the C-section. I'm feeling confident that my doctors are taking care of me, that my babies are going to be healthfully delivered, healthfully, whatever the correct word is. And, it was all good. And I had the support that I needed from family and friends to help me recover afterwards. And I bounced back. I had so many people right after all my C-sections, and they would say to me, I can't believe you are like walking around within 24 hours of being, sliced open. But mind over matter, right? Because I knew that I could do this, and I knew that this was how it was meant to be for me. And that was absolutely beautiful. So again, if I had resisted, it would have been much more difficult. And this comes up all the time. If you look at all sorts of medical scenarios, right? I know Dr. Joe Dispenza likes to tell, a variety of stories around, medical situations where people are, in acceptance and kind of willing to have a positive outcome. And it works that way. I can't cite any of them in particular, but I know that he talks about that frequently. But it's really, we create the energy that we receive. So it's going to work either positive or negative, and you have to decide. So that comes back to being the creator of your own life. What does it mean to be your truest self? How do you really be your authentic you? Who is that? Who is Bobby? Who is Hallie? What are we about? We are not a person that somebody designed. Yes, we come from parents, we come from families, we come from friends, schools, work, etc. But at the end of the day, we are who we are because of who we are and our choices.
That's right. That's right. We are students of intention, and we are folks that accept, things as they come. Right.
Exactly.
Or at least learn to do that as much as we can. Thanks again for sharing that story. So I want to take this opportunity to now go backwards and bring it back to the I think what you shared at the top of the show with regards to, this Hallie hasn't always been like this. Hallie hasn't always been a student of intention. I know from a business perspective, you spent time in B2B sales. You worked at ADP, the behemoth payroll company that I'm very familiar with. I have a lot of good friends that hang their hat there. And I'm excited to hear this sort of seeds of this transformation, the seeds of self-development where you started leaning into your authentic self. Cause that's a lot of ways been my world, corporate B2B sales. In so many words. So yeah, let's take a trip down memory lane. What did those first steps look like? What did realization look like? What did discovery look like? Tell us more.
Yeah, well, I will share that I really didn't have that discovery until I was about 38. So I'm turning 42 in a couple of weeks, and I don't know when this airs, but I might already be 42 when this comes out.
No, we pump these out pretty quick. We'll have this up.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm about 3 weeks out from my birthday. So, in any event, I would say that I'll just share that I'm a firstborn, and my I only have one brother. He is 7 years younger than me, and there were no other kids in my family. So I didn't have cousins until I was already a teenager. The reason I share this is because I grew up in a family of adults. So I was basically an adult from the time I was born, an old soul, if you will, but also just, living amongst adults. And so I was modeling adult behavior, which nothing wrong with that. It's just, it is. And I always felt like there was a very specific path that I was intended to follow. I didn't question it. I just did it. You go to school, you graduate high school with good grades, you go to a 4-year university, you graduate that 4-year university, you get a job in corporate, you climb the corporate ladder. My initial idea when I started at ADP was I'm going to be sitting in that corner office as a CEO. I had no idea what that meant, by the way, but that sounded really exciting to be the boss and to be the chief, right? And I just thought that this was how you lived your life. So you did all these things. And at some point you got married and you bought a house and you had the kids and the kids went to daycare or something. I didn't know, but this is the behavior that I modeled because this is what I had seen. And I never questioned it. I just did it. And it was all fine and good until it wasn't. And what I mean by that is, I was doing my thing. I was successful. I was making money. I was hitting top ranks in sales. And I realized at some point, right before actually my son was born, I was miserable. I hated it. It was awful. It wasn't me. So then I thought I'd try out, well, maybe I'll be a stay-at-home mom. Because then I thought, well, if I'm not going to be this corporate woman, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom, like full time, raise my kids. Well, that didn't really work out either because I love being a mom. I love my kids. But being a full-time stay-at-home mom also wasn't really fulfilling my purpose and my passion. And at that point, my husband had started his business. He has a computer support company locally. And he said, well, what if you work for me part-time? I could use your help in sales and you can be with the kids part-time. Why don't you do that? And I thought, okay, well, this will kind of bridge the gap. I'll have both worlds. But it turned out that it was, they say that when you kind of half-ass something, you don't get it on, you don't benefit on either side of that. And that was basically what happened. So I felt like I wasn't feeling purposeful or successful in the sales, even though I was helping my husband grow his business. I didn't feel purposeful or successful raising my children because even though I was doing all the things, it didn't feel like it was something very fun for me. It always felt obligatory and I was running around, taking them places, joining the committees, but I didn't want to do it. So nothing felt fun for me. And I lived for many years in this space of frustration and resentment and anger. And the more time that went on, the more frustration, resentment, and anger popped up. And it finally turned into this place in my life where I was pissed off. I was like, this sucks. I don't want to live this life. I don't know what I did to deserve this, but I am a victim of this circumstance. And I feel like I've been cheated of my existence. I no longer, have this dream of being the CEO. I have these kids and now I'm strapped to and I don't know what to do with. And I'm stuck with this husband that, he's not fulfilling my needs in many ways. And I'm stuck and I'm frustrated. So I, wanted to escape. And so what do you do when you want to escape? You go, do things that you shouldn't be doing, like drinking and partying and hanging out with people that kind of fulfill those fantasies because it feels like they know, oh, there's this mysterious life out there that will solve all your problems. But in fact, it doesn't solve your problems because the problems are within. And so, that resulted in a lot of hard times. Fortunately, I'll tell the flip side of that story is my husband and I made a conscious choice to work through our problems and to work through our communication that had been lacking. We did therapy and we are stronger than ever. We've been together since, I guess I was 20 years old. Yeah. So we've been married 18 years and together 21. And, we always say that that's when we really grew up, was when we went through that point in time where we had to do this self-discovery and realize there'd been a lot of things that we hadn't been telling each other. And a lot of couples don't necessarily get through that part of their life. And I feel very grateful and fortunate that we did. And that was really where, I had this turning point. Like I have to make some changes in my life. If I'm going to enjoy my life, if I'm truly going to be authentic and create my own fucking life that I want to live, then I need to show up and I need to communicate and I need to ask myself the questions. And I'm not a victim, and it's no one else's fault. It's not external, it's internal. And that's been the biggest shift. And once I started putting practices into place like meditation, journaling, saying affirmations, asking myself these questions every single day, right? That's how I started living intentionally. That's how I manifested everything that I've built, including my own business, which is thriving, and it's so fun for me. And fun is a huge part of who I am. So I talk a lot about core values, and the 4 core values that I write down every day are authenticity, freedom, fun, and love. And those are 4 values that I hold near and dear to my heart. And everything that I do has to be in alignment with those 4 values, or at least some combination. And if it's not, then it's a no for me. And that's the bottom line. But I didn't know that until I went through that journey.
Sounds like quite the journey. Thank you again for sharing that. I mean, the big lesson I take out of that is one I think needs restated. And it's the lesson that like these external factors, particularly big external factors like job and marriage, right, are not, they're not the things causing all the problems in our life, and they're not the things that are going to cause all the happiness in our life. But we all go through these times where we're like, no, that's it, right? Like if I go from job A to job B, like that's going to make the fulfillment box checked. If I'm not feeling right, like what's directly in my path or my way is this other human being that, at one point or another, like I really loved and they loved me back. And, but for some reason we think like, well, no, that's the resistance. That's the thing standing in my way, and I need to go away from that. But, and kudos to you for like, getting through that, particularly the marriage part. Cause most of us, like, let's be honest, when we face hard times, like, again, that's the thing that's right in our way. That's literally the person that's closest to us.
Right. So
the person that, is going to get the shrapnel, the explosions. And you guys leaned into it and you got through it. So bravo. And again, the lesson I think is like, no, what you learned is like, no, those things actually didn't really do it, right? It was inviting, principles of living into your life. It was inviting meditation into your life. It was looking inward as opposed to external. And I think sometimes we get this chicken egg thing going where we're like, well, if I become the CEO, then I'll do all the really good things that make me feel whole. As opposed to if I do all the things that make me feel whole, then maybe I'll become a CEO, or maybe I won't, but either way, I'll certainly feel better.
Right. Well, it's this whole like if then scenario, right? Which I know it's really easy to get caught up in that story, right? If only this, then this. But the if onlys are where we get ourselves in trouble and where we get stuck in these loops, because it's not if only, you got to create it right now, right? So when I had this idea in my head that life was meant to be a certain way, and then it wasn't meeting my expectations, I like completely wigged out because I had no idea what to do. And I felt lost and confused, right? Because I hadn't opened myself up to, there's a lot of other possibilities. And I was so dependent on these external circumstances for making me feel satisfied, successful, happy, etc. But like you said, that's not where the happiness and joy comes from. It has to come from within, right? The money doesn't give you the happiness. The success doesn't give you the happiness, right? I mean, so many super successful humans will tell you, I'm miserable. Why are they miserable? Because they're not listening to their heart and they're not following who they truly are. They're not living their authentic life.
Absolutely. So let's talk specifically about, I guess, these paths that started to present themselves once you're kicking yourself in the butt a little bit and saying, I got to take care of myself. I've got to live the life that I want to, I want to feel the way I want to feel. I want to do the things that make me feel the way I want to feel. But then it sounds like, paths had presented themselves in the form of doing some different kinds of work, of maybe even living a different marriage, or at least being living a different marriage, I guess is probably a fine way to say it. what did these paths presenting themselves look like, if you can remember that? And like, what did it look like to sort of say, okay, well, I want to go down this path. Like, I want to make these changes.
I mean, it's funny. In the beginning, it felt like I had to start making changes externally to my body. And that's where I kind of associated, the pain and the struggle with myself, because I had neglected my own physical needs for a long time while I was in this escapism, toxic headspace. I was, like I said, I was drinking, I was partying, I wasn't sleeping well, my hormones were out of whack. I wasn't taking care of my physical vessel. So initially I was like, oh, well, I got to just lose some weight, get some more exercise, get some better sleep, kind of tap into that. But what I realized as I started to take control of my physical body, I realized that it was my mindset that I needed to shift. So one of the biggest catalysts for me for shifting my mindset was doing personal development reading every single day. And I started with the book, The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And I don't know if you've read that one, Bobby.
I have not, but I like it.
It's fantastic. It's a quick read. And I'll sum it up in a quote from Darren Hardy, which is, small, consistent actions over time equal radical results.
Small, consistent actions over time equal radical results.
And that really hit me hard, like really hard, because it wasn't about fixing what I had broken. It was about taking small, consistent actions over the rest of my life to create the radical results that I was seeking. And so what that started for me looking like was, like I said, reading every day. So I read about 10 minutes a day to start with. I did that for a couple of months. Then I started thinking, how can I expand upon this? I started listening to podcasts. And the funny thing, this was in 2018. And I'd never heard of a podcast before then. I didn't know what it was. I didn't even know how to access them. I'm like, what is a podcast? How do you do that? Is that like an app? Like, what does that mean? It's funny because I'm now kind of obsessed, but yeah, so then I started listening to podcasts and I started getting more interested in the psychology and the positive psychology and learning about things like, neuroplasticity and neurolinguistic programming and rewriting your story and intention setting and affirmations. So I just started to layer on the different levels. And as I peeled back the layers, I would also layer on the actions that would help me get to this intentional place of living. And, it's a journey. It's ongoing. It's not like I've made it, because I don't want to ever make it. I want to keep going. Right. So I just keep building on it and expanding and learning and increasing my knowledge and adding in things where it makes sense or taking away others that I no longer need. But it started looking like, me showing up for myself better. So I physically started feeling better. Me showing up in my marriage better. So we had much better communication. We had much better love. We had much better intimacy. Looked like me showing up as a better mom, having better communication with my children, giving them more, relevant parenting and helping support my family in that way, being more in partnership with my husband in all the ways that we raise our family. In my business, it looked like me getting to share my story with other people like yourself and to really help people transform and find their own nuggets of how do I peel back my own layers and how do I really discover my own inner truth and inner wisdom. And, I keep going, and every day I have new discoveries. I worked with 2 clients yesterday who each have, beautiful stories and beautiful energy, and, they're dealing with stuff, but we're peeling back the layers and we're making plans and helping put accountability into place, because it's all a journey. Right. And we need support, and we don't exist in silos, but we need to be willing to do the work on ourselves. And we need to be willing to do that in a reflection, because that's really where you find all the answers, is within. And sometimes you just need that, that influence from the outside to help you shine a brighter light on the inside.
I want to talk about the support piece that you just mentioned there. And again, I could just listen to you talk about this stuff all day. It's
Thank you.
Beautifully said. I can tell you've really just embodied these ideas, these frankly simple concepts that quote Ryan Holiday aren't easy. They're simple but not easy. And it just comes out in how you speak. So, thank you again, for sharing, all the stories and your own takeaways. But, yeah, you mentioned the support piece, particularly the support you give for your clients now. How did the support, so I say there's 3 phases to living with intention. There's action, right? Action is the answer. Action is where you had to start taking care of yourself. You had to start having better conversations. You had to start showing up for your kids differently. And then that spurred this discovery, this awareness of, okay, well, actually, this is what this life feels this way. And I kind of want to feel that way more, right? Like you gain this awareness. But then what's beautiful about life and the universe is we get a little help. We get a little support. Resources come to our aid, so to speak. In my own journey with intention, right? When I started writing the book, it was crazy. I just started writing. I started, following that path and discovering my own awareness of like what I could write, what this idea of living with intention meant in my own unique, time and space. And weird things started to happen. I got introduced by an old buddy from Ohio to a person that had self-published a book here in LA, and he was a transplant as well. He introduced me then to my editor on the project. Her name's Jennifer. And as soon as I met her, she happened to be a poet as well, which I write a lot of poetry. She was reading Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. So I'm like, wait a second, this is a poet that's an editor that's also studying intention in her own way. And we just we got along like peas and carrots, and she ultimately helped bring my book to life. And there's story after story. Like once I started from a health perspective, I met this guy, Ryan Kearney, that as a former college athlete, you would think I know a thing or two about health. You'd think, as a wrestler too, like I would know how to lose weight, how to be healthy, so to speak. But man, I just treated my body really poorly for 10 years. And like that old way of getting healthy just wasn't serving me. And I just couldn't get over this hump. And this guy, Ryan, comes in my life and introduces me to tea and introduces me to meditation, introduces me to the power of food and the food that we put in our bodies. Long story long, like resources came to my aid, and they still do. What about you? What resources, opportunities, support, what things have sort of showed up in your life in that regard?
So many. I think the easiest one for me to pinpoint is the people, right? The people resources. So I know we talked before we hit record about a new partnership I have with Simon Parsons, who's going to be on your show shortly. So he and I met through LinkedIn. I'm not even sure exactly how we met through LinkedIn, but again, universe brings us together. Turns out that we've got many synergies. We share a lot of ideas that are the same. We always joke that we're mindset twinners, and I know twinner's not even a word, but it's, our word. So we say we're mindset twinners. And we've been doing for the past 8 months or so, we've been hosting these monthly community workshops called Jam Sessions that we turned into a challenge in May. And we're going to be doing a podcast and putting out more challenges going forward. So that's been a huge blessing and a huge opportunity that, we've never met in person. I'm in Santa Barbara, California. He's in Salt Lake City. There's really no reason, so to speak, that we should have come together and had such a great way to collaborate. And yet it's happening. Awesome. I have another super, super amazing close friend named Odessa Christiana, who is a gem. She calls herself the imagination queen. She is also a mindset guru. And again, somebody that there's really no reason that we should have met, but we've become she's become one of my very closest friends and somebody that I can confide in with all the things, and we just get each other. So the universe, I believe, brought us together because we need each other and we need each other's support and kindness and love and creativity and fun and all of it. So those are just two people that have come into my life, but so many opportunities. I've just been given, opportunities to take courses or to learn something or to read a book or to be on a podcast like this. The fact that you reached out to me, Bobby, it's again, not coincidence. So I feel so blessed and supported and loved by the universe for all of the opportunities that have come my way that have been such a massive shift from where I was even 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I was at one of my lowest lows in my life. And I literally could not see outside of my low. And I remember waking up in the morning and thinking, oh my God, what have I done to my life? I don't know how I'm ever going to get out of this. Literally, like the pit in my stomach. I felt sad. I felt discouraged. I didn't know that there was going to be a way out. And I think of where I am now and everything that has come to be. And I'm so incredibly grateful. And I also celebrate myself for taking that active role. It didn't just happen because I prayed for it. Yes, I pray, I say my gratitude, I meditate, but I take action. And when you align with the action of your core values and your intentions, everything falls into place because you're putting out that energy.
Well said. Well said. And I think that's the other piece I want to ask real quick on like Simon as an example, right? Like these opportunities, these people, the support, right? This stuff shows up, but it takes us accepting it. It takes us understanding that it exists, being aware of it. What did that look like to try? Like, because you're right. Like a lot of people would say, somebody hits me up on LinkedIn. They're from Salt Lake. I'm Santa Barbara. Like what? And again, you actually don't even remember how you guys came into contact, but right. People hear that story and they're like, I wouldn't connect with that person. I wouldn't do that. Like what, I guess put ourselves in your shoes and the mindset that you had to make sure that you take advantage of what the universe is giving you.
So I want to talk about something that I feel really passionately about and I talk about often. And this is one of the hardest things for people to really wrap their brains around is this concept of surrender, right? Surrender and trust. And I have a quote. I was just looking on my whiteboard next to me and it says, I surrender and I activate my life. And that is something that I literally look at and say to myself every day, I surrender and I activate my life, meaning I trust that the universe is providing for me and presenting opportunities for me because I am loved and because I'm putting out the energy that I desire to bring in. And when I surrender, I therefore set the ball into motion and I set those activations into play, right? So like you said, how did I get to work with Simon, trust him, begin this collaboration, this partnership? Yeah, could I have blown it off and been like, I'm not going to, connect with this dude. I don't really know him. Of course. But I trusted and I surrendered and I thought there's something special here. Let's play around with this and see where it goes. And we've only run one challenge so far. We had over 50 people in that challenge changing their life, really taking action. We focused on a morning routine and the growth that people experienced and the community that they built in this short amount of time during our 5-day challenge. It was freaking awesome. So I know that the universe has my back. And I know that this idea of surrendering and trusting and just allowing for life to unfold in the way that it's meant to, that is how it's meant to be. And I'm going to keep on with my positive energy and putting out my activation because it's going to keep providing and showing up in the way that it's meant to.
Boom.
Boom.
I surrender and activate my life. You say that every day. I love it.
I do. It's on my whiteboard right there.
I love that one. Well, now you're doing this stuff for other people. You're supporting other folks. You even mentioned this workshop with Simon, or this challenge, I should say. Tell me more about the work that you're doing, the people you work with, and what that looks like.
Yeah. So, I kind of bounce around to decide what works for me. I love teaching. I'm definitely called to be in a teaching capacity, teach in a group. That's something that really speaks to me. So I have a signature course that is all about self-love. It's really geared toward women and it's around self-love and manifesting. And I've run that group 3 times and it's going to be happening again in September. So stay tuned if any women listening are interested in that. I do a little bit of one-on-one coaching, but like I said, I gravitate more toward the group environment. So Simon and I are putting together some more challenges and workshops, and that will be co-ed. I host workshops twice a month that are free for the community for both the new moon and the full moon, because I love to tap into the spiritual side and the astrology. Those are open to anybody that's interested. And I have a really active Facebook group for women. I'm, again, looking to expand into more of a co-ed opportunity, and putting out more courses. So I have some pre-recorded options that, if people are interested in. I have a course on LinkedIn, actually on LinkedIn Learning, called Unlocking Your Potential. So that's a really fun course. And again, meant for business professionals that are looking for, how do I really tap into a deeper side of myself and then unleash that power in the workplace.
Hallie, you've been such a good guest.
Thank you.
I want to give you, I could ask you questions all day. I actually have one more question, but also want to give you some space if you have anything that's on your mind that you want to discuss before we call it a pod. But yeah, that last point about workplace, right? And bringing this into the workplace. And this is just something I've been wrestling with. I don't know if you've ever wrestled with this, but when I first started, writing down my own intentions, when I started writing about living with intention in the form of the book, when I started podcasting and writing my weekly newsletter, I very much was like, okay, there's this student of intention guy over here on the right. I don't quite know who he is, but he sort of looks like an artist maybe. And then there's this guy, Bobby, that I know really well, that's been in the work world, particularly in the software technology sales space, as a sales leader for much of my career, right? For about almost 15 years. And I saw these as two separate people. And literally it was I almost kind of have to put this sales guy aside to make room for this artist. And it wasn't until recently that I'm like, well, that's just silly. And I'm still me. And in my consulting work, I've brought this stuff to the table, right? People notice when they interact with me now, right? I teach sales methodology with a little bit of flair, a little different lens, we'll say. But I'm still forging that connection. I'm still figuring out how those worlds connect. Cause to me, again, it seemed like they maybe weren't meant to be that way. But I think you've maybe are a little step ahead in that regard. What do you think? Is that accurate? What do you think about bridging the mindset, the idea of living with intention, bringing it to the space that you were really much a part of the last 20 years, which is B2B corporate sales? Right.
Well, I'll tell you, if I knew what I know now about mindset and about productivity and about how to apply it in a professional setting, I would have kicked so much more ass at ADP, and I did pretty damn well as it was. So I'll just say that. But look, they go hand in hand, right? We can't isolate. We don't just live intentionally in our family life or in our personal life, and then when we go to work, we put that aside. I believe that mindset is lifestyle, right? And personal development, it's all lifestyle, self-awareness. The more self-aware you can be, the more you can understand how your mindset positively impacts everything that you do, the more successful you're going to be in every part of your life, your family life, your love life, your money life, whatever you do professionally, whether you're in sales, you're an entrepreneur, you're an employee, you're in management, whatever it is that you do, if you understand how you work, how you operate, what your triggers are, what motivates you, right? If you understand how to activate your mindset, then you are going to be much more successful, calm, joyful, etc. in all aspects of your life. So I love that you are, figuring out how to bridge the gap. And, this is not a story that's been told. This is kind of, in the past, the work that we're talking about is kind of been new age, frou-frou, blah, blah. You guys are too woo-woo.
For the artists.
Yeah, the artists, right? Cool. But how about we start, expanding that into acceptance? Because it's just being human. And you can look at it however you want to. It doesn't mean that you have to start, praying to crystals and, having statues all over your house and altars. I mean, if you want to, that's cool. I like that stuff. That doesn't mean everybody does. But if you can understand how to activate your mindset by understanding neuroplasticity, by understanding what does it mean to activate your reticular activating system, by what does it mean to tap into authenticity and setting intention and, looking at intuitive guidance, right? There's so much wisdom there that translates in the professional world that it just equates to massive success. And that's how you really blow it up and get everything that you desire.
Simply stated, right? Yeah, simply stated. No, I mean, it's funny though. There is that, I think you hinted at like the stigma of
right?
it all. And I was feeling that. I still feel that. And at the same time, like, you're just like, if you take a step back and you just think about this logically, like, yes, you would have kicked way more butt at ADP.
100%.
And yes, like, I built sales teams at, seed stage startups, at, corporate companies, as a consultant. And I'm like, and I was really successful in my own right. And it's like, but I know for the fact that I would be way more successful if I was as healthy as I am now. I would have been way more successful as if I had been as intentional as I am now, as if I had been more methodical about how I showed up every single day. Yet when when we still, I think, interact with the corporate folk, right? My peers, my friends, my customers, there's still this like, well, I don't know. I don't know if we have space to figure out like how authenticity, leads to the bottom line. We need to make space for more like, prospecting training and training on like how to qualify a customer or like how to talk about a product better. But I'm with you. I
mean, those are good skills, right? Like you need those too. You need those too. But how I see it is when you understand mindset, when you understand how you operate to activate your best self, that's building the foundation. Then when you learn those skills about better prospecting, better training, etc., you're just adding like fuel to the fire. And those are just the layers on top of it. So when you build this solid foundation, then when you learn those skills, that's when you really show up and deliver like this massive punch of impact.
I think we'll leave it at that, Hallie. You are just a wonderful human being. I really appreciate you being on the show. I want to invite particularly my female listeners, as I know there are many, to connect with you and get involved in the work that you're doing. At least follow you on LinkedIn and let some of your, the lessons that you're learning as a student of intention, influence their lives. How do we best invite the listeners to connect with Hallie?
Thank you so much. Well, and thank you also, Bobby, just for inviting me to be on the show. It's been a great conversation. I feel very aligned with you, and I'm so glad that the universe brought us together. Yes, please do follow me on LinkedIn. You can just find me there. My profile, Hallie Avolio. You can also go to my website, which is sassyhealthy.fit. I have a lot of resources and content there. I have a free guide that I'm going to offer, and I think it'll be in the show notes. It's my ultimate guide to manifesting, and it offers 7 actionable items that you can take in a whole workbook. It's a free download, and you can follow that to really kind of tap into a lot of these things we talked about today. And the last thing that I want to share is that I am a huge fan of TikTok, and I put out a ton of fun videos there. So if anybody's on TikTok and wants to follow me there, it's just Sassy Healthy Fit, and I put out tons of content there as well.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again, and we'll have a wonderful day, Hallie.
Thank you, Bobby. It was great to be here. I appreciate you.
Hey, it's Bobby. Thanks for listening to today's show. For more, follow Student of Intention at www.studentofintention.com. And remember, don't wait, start small, learn as you go.